Wow. Russ, thank you for being back. Um, I actually sent a text message to Marcia
You did.
yesterday. Yeah, and I said, you know what? Thank you so much for that introduction to Russ. It's truly the highlight of my week. You know, it's
Oh,
and I appreciate that so much because I can I can kind of see. I'm looking at the calendar. Our time is slowly coming to an end soon, and I just cannot believe how quickly it went. You know,
yes.
and every time we meet, I could just pick your brain on on so many things.
Well, just because we have a conclusion doesn't mean that we have to conclude it.
Yeah, yeah.
So
If
just
anything, yeah, I would say it's a beginning.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And the reality is we have so much to contribute to each other, Tony.
Mhm.
There's I receive value, and one of the things, the philosophies that I've always lived by is you cannot teach without learning.
Yeah.
When you're open to learning, you will learn, and you don't always know where the education and experience will come from. So
Hmm.
look
Well,
up as well as down, and forward as well as behind.
you're absolutely right. A lot of the times in preparation of our meeting, I tend to play some of those clips that we've talked about the previous week, and it helps me in the editing process. It helps me to learn that hey, there's a lot of work here, but how can I figure out ways to streamline it and not be overwhelmed with so much content?
Yes, and that's this. I think that's the secret. That's the true secret is to avoid the overwhelm of the
Yeah,
process. And when we're first learning a process that seems like a lot of moving parts, and when it becomes muscle memory,
yeah,
and when it becomes part of the routine of the day, that's when we stop and we think, wow, I didn't even have to think about that now. I It's just part of the process, and it just becomes, you know, it just becomes so simple and invisible almost. And
yeah,
that's when you continue to graduate to the next level and continue to improve on what you're doing, regardless of what it is.
yeah, yeah.
And this is an example of that.
Yeah. I wanted to again, first we're going to be talking about obviously the mentorship angle, the situation with my personal assistant or former mentee, Tushar, is it could all pretty much almost be a case study. You know what I mean? It was such a rewarding experience when I think back at it, and it was challenging, and it's gained so much traction where I have my family members and other people asking me what's going on with that situation, and I love it, because there was an update since the last time we talked,
Okay.
and it's such a learning opportunity, um, that and I want to tell you what really happened. So what had happened was, it's been about a week now since we sort of parted ways, and I told him that he's going to be on the next step of his journey, solo. You know what I mean? And we had gotten as far as we could. In the meantime, about a few weeks earlier, we had an agreement where I was going to be paying half an amount for a new phone because I felt he needed a new upgrade on a phone to take pictures and do things, and 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 I thought that would really maybe help him out, and help me out as well at the same
Yeah.
time. So he seemed kind of reluctant to do that. And then as we were sort of in the last few weeks, as things weren't, really rolling along too well, he kind of rushed that process through. He went and got the phone, and um and the last 2 weeks I never saw any pictures or anything from the phone on for the project that we were working on. And and what happened was then I went back and I looked at his sort of um, his Upwork profile. And
Mhm.
in the last few weeks, he had started taking up projects which was sort of against our agreement, where he was
Mm.
supposed to be working exclusively for us. And to me, this was such a learning opportunity where he can see almost like a student that the teacher is kind of upset and he's getting the answers kind of wrong. But it's, he'd rather just go in and kind of, not face the issue of how to deal with it in a
Right.
sense, you know? And, and then I was kind of intrigued where he approached me to pay, to to pay the balance of the phone. And I felt, hey, you know what? It was very intriguing and interesting because he had nothing to say about me, about him, working on other jobs. That's why
Mhm.
I felt the process was maybe going so slowly because his time was in other places,
Yeah.
you know. And and I thought he didn't have any images to show me from the phone, right? And I just thought it was so interesting that he would, like, okay, take it, you would want to end on good terms. You'd want to, like, get a good referral, and you just know you don't know who's. I've heard this before. It said whose ass you're gonna have to kiss later in life, and I was very intrigued that he didn't have that level of awareness.
Yeah. He had not learned the lesson yet, has he?
No. And the irony was he would be in meetings with me where we would see other VAs who were not working exclusively and they had gone back and against our agreement. And
Yeah.
and he was, in the end, he was doing the same thing, and he didn't realize that he can be caught as well.
Yeah.
It was just there's so many lessons in there. You
Yeah.
know.
A lot of it, we all have different elements in our personality.
Yeah.
There's the hero, the guide, the victim, and so when we play these roles, sometimes we feel justified in our actions because we feel that it's important, at the time. And so, like, helping someone out may not necessarily help them out
Yeah.
because and you have to give it in a way that you don't expect anything in return a lot of times.
Yeah.
And the lesson is for them and not for you. I can't count on, I can't count the times that I've assisted or supported somebody along their journey when in fact it wasn't, it just almost felt like it was my responsibility to help them out.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily, and in turn, also, I've had many people along my journey, mentors, supporters, people that believed in my journey that, especially in business, I think it's especially true is, not every business succeeds. And there's a lot of people along the way that want to see you succeed. They want to believe in you.
Yeah.
They believe in you. And they support you, even if your long-term results don't end up being the exact outcome that you wanted to accomplish.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that the real value is in the lesson in the experience,
Yeah.
not
I'm
the outcome.
I'm sure he'll have an aha moment and realize his situation at some point,
Mhm.
because I had pointed out to him. I said, "Hey, listen, you pretty much know yourself. You're probably being paid double right now at the rate he was being paid. That um, to to his skill level at that time."
Mhm.
And so the last 6 months, I mean, 8 months since he's been working full time, and, and 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 he was working before that for us freelance and so forth. He has no expenses, right? So
Yeah.
he's smart. I'm pretty sure he's saving and socking away his money, right?
Mhm.
So to me, I felt that that what's missing in these kids right now, and it's not his fault, is really that kind of hunger. Like
Yeah.
I would joke around with him and say, hey, you know what? your room is twice as big as my room. It's nice, much nicer. Like, you know, your parents have some money, you
Yeah.
know, and maybe you just don't. If you think you need the money, imagine how much people here need the money too, because they have all these other expenses that you might
Yeah.
not have.
Yeah. It's like if some people are feeding families on this type of income.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and it was so intriguing, and honestly, I'm thankful for everything because it shows me everything that I've talked about before of gratitude and humility. It all plays out in these sort of situations.
yeah, yeah. So how is your journey going outside of the mentorship role?
Yeah,
How is your plant-based journey
well, you know what?
transferring?
That's exactly what we're going to be talking about more right now is the fact that um, when it comes to sort of plant based, I mean, literally, I'm getting ready to um, celebrate my 1 year anniversary.
Yes.
And I talked about that where it's really becoming you need these sort of rituals in your
Mhm.
life, that these moments where you can kind of sit back and take stock and be thankful that you've reached a sort of milestone that I never thought would even be possible, remotely possible. And it's just, I'm looking forward to that moment. I'm planning to experiment to go raw for a week. And
Mhm.
it's everything that we talked about. It does not always feel like work. I'll
Yeah.
take time out and I'll make time to post something on TikTok and all these other platforms, because I enjoy talking about this because I feel I can really um, educate other people.
I have a question about your raw food week.
Yeah.
This raw food week, do you have a menu planned out, or do you have a strategy for your eating intervals, or is it going to be that you're going to have raw food available that you can just consume when you feel the need to eat, or how does that transfer into day-to-day activities?
I'm glad you asked me that because right now I haven't planned it out, you know,
Okay.
and and I'm the worst person. I was never good at homework,
I'm
you
not
know
a
what I mean?
planner at
And
all.
and that's why literally I figured I had to be an entrepreneur in my life because we're that type of person that if we're not good at reading that instruction manual, we better be good at figuring it out.
Oh, that is so true. That is so true. If you
Yeah.
don't like the instructions from IKEA, you better build a business, right?
That's it. That's it. I'm gonna just show them, and it's the same thing where I'm gonna start doing that research, and that's what I love about you is you got me thinking again. Hey, okay, it's coming up. It's gonna be actually for end of March for April 1st. So, um, I'm gonna. One thing I did find in this
Uh-huh.
journey in the last um, year, and it's been 10 months now, is that I'm constantly eating. I'm detoxing my body because I don't get the same number of calories. I
Mhm.
don't get the same number of protein. I'm blessed. Like at my work, we have sort of a kitchen area and we have a fridge and I bring mainly my own lunch
Yeah,
and my fruit and all that, But it is a lot of work,
yeah.
It's very time consuming because you're eating so often, you know and and I think it's going to only exacerbate um, um, the fact that it's going to be tougher with uncooked foods, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot of different ways and strategies because one thing I have noticed
Mhm.
is that my love for fruit has only increased
It
daily.
has only increased.
Yeah.
So that helps with your raw food, uh, your week of raw food,
I
right?
think so. I believe so. That's what's gonna do it for me, is the fact that um, I'm gonna be able to um, basically um, translate that expression even further.
Yeah.
That's what I want. Where I mean, we talked about this previously where, I mean, I'm taking fruits that I really hated. Like I disliked papaya for years, and and it just it's to me it goes back to gratitude and humility,
Yeah.
and and sometimes I look at that papaya and I think, hey, it's not going to be that sweet. It doesn't, maybe it's not ripe or whatever. And it's amazing the nourishment the Mother Nature can give us. And it doesn't even have to look sometimes so juicy, and it's sweet. The sugar high that I get from that is
Yeah.
better than any cannabis product. Literally, I'm telling you.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing about that, and you nailed it, is the sugar high. Because when you're off of processed foods and you're off of the sugar that's added to almost everything processed, you your body starts craving completely different things.
Yeah, yeah. And I would definitely say what you want to do in this case is that start slowly, you know, and
Mhm.
find what you like, what you don't like. You saw on purpose, I would definitely even go back and find fruits and other things that I was not always a big fan
Yeah.
because I needed to challenge myself. In fact, I believe this whole process right now is like I've always had a fear of heights. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Literally, this is going back 30 years ago. Me and my brother, we were in Hawaii, and I think we were on our way to skydive, like jump out of a plane. And I literally, I couldn't do it,
Uh,
you know? And, and I think to me, this is like conquering one type of fear, the
yeah.
fear of the fact that I didn't have the resistance, I didn't have the patience, I
Mm.
didn't have the humility.
Yes.
I didn't have the gratitude. And when I strip away that ego
Yeah.
and really peel away that onion, it's
Well,
just
and
like,
I think part of that process too, Tony, is self-awareness.
yeah,
We've talked about this in the past, is how do I start looking at what I'm doing and really becoming aware of how I feel about something? Is it real or imagined? And I told my son the other day, fear and faith are two sides of the same coin.
yeah,
They both require you to believe in something you can't see, but faith will move you forward and fear will hold you back.
yeah,
And I think it's that kind of concept that it's like, okay, well, is it true? Is it going to hurt me? Is it going to kill me? Or is it just something I need to become more aware of? Do I
mhm,
need to just inform myself and be aware of what it is that I'm going through right now? What is it that I'm feeling?
yeah, yeah. There's so much in my journey, especially it's been exactly 30 years where, I mean, I feel I was a different person. You
Yeah.
know, I was, and I had discussed this with my family last summer. We were truly very dysfunctional,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't necessarily our fault. It was the circumstance,
Yeah.
and it feels so blessed, to come to this point of awareness, and I just feel like, hey, I've been walking around with shades on my whole life, blinded, you
Yeah.
know, and and it's I don't know. I don't know what. Sometimes I'm just at a loss for words. Even.
Yeah. Well, I encourage you to, um,
Mm,
you know, self improvement is a lifelong goal, right?
yeah.
So one of the things that I think about, and you've inspired me to consider, is
Mm,
what am I consuming? How am I consuming it? What is it that I want to do with
yeah.
my future? And one of the things that I've been reflecting on since last week
Yeah.
is this idea of how how can I continue to improve not only myself but the experience that people have about me that are in my life.
Yeah.
How can I become a better person for the people that I support and serve? and what does that look like, and how do I show up around that area of my life? Because right now I'm at a point, maybe like yourself, that
Yeah.
you're now in mentorship mode and you're in teaching mode, even though all the lessons you're going through are still active part of your life. It's not
Yeah.
like the learning is done. It's just that the delivery of some of the experience that you've had going back in your life is now starting to occur, and you can actually share that information with more people.
Let me ask you this: is it sometimes viewed as almost like a weakness that um, when we say we're also learning, that
Mm-hmm.
that people are surprised? Hey, if that you should be in a position of authority. You're a teacher. You should know kind of everything almost, or almost most things. And 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 I think that I've seen that mindset a lot. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that. What I saw a video recently where it was a young kid who was only maybe 25, and he was doing amazing, all these Amazon videos and FBA, and some of his students have surpassed him.
Yeah.
And they're doing even way more financially and stuff. But that does not take away from anything at all.
No. No. And that's a great point, Tony, because if you think about it, your biggest success
Mm-hmm.
could supersede your success.
Yeah.
If you can help somebody excel past your abilities, and it doesn't take away from what you know or what you've learned. It just allows you the opportunity to say, here's some good that came out of my experience that I was able to transfer to someone else.
Yeah.
And because everybody's on a different journey, everybody, there's a lot of times where, whether you're competitive or not competitive will determine where you end up. And some people are very comfortable with what they have. They're very satisfied and grateful for where they are, and they don't necessarily need more to be happy.
Yeah.
They have more than enough, or they have enough to be successful. And the reality is that we have an opportunity to actually contribute to that outcome as a community. And depending on where you are, it's like I tell people, it's like at the grocery line. You're in the front of the line or you're behind the line, and there's always a line. There's somebody ahead of you or somebody behind you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's life. That's the way life is. That's the way it evolves. That's the way it continues to evolve.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: that do you feel that in terms of dietary habits and things that people are really more aware, or do you think we're kind of going back now that maybe COVID is kind of maybe not so much in our minds?
Um, I don't think I haven't seen. Well, there's a couple of things I have thoughts about around this subject. Number one, when I go in the grocery store, I'm not sure about your neighborhood, but when I go in my neighborhood, there's much more empty shelves. There's much more limited selections of products that I've been used to seeing in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So that can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on where your perspective is.
Yeah.
I don't think there's so many more choices that we have even now today than we had 20 years ago. The products and services. The difference though is, and the challenge we have is that they're all manufactured foods.
Yeah.
The foods that are manufactured are the ones that we need to be more aware of. And the machine that creates these products also is very good at marketing those products and creating desire for these products and creating a potential outcome and an audience for these products. So it goes back to your purpose and goal, and where you've had a little bit of humility in saying, these products are not necessarily made for me. They're not what I would like to consume. And so I think we're at a point where a lot of people are thinking in the last couple of years,
Yeah.
I have a choice. I have more choices than I had before. Even though the stores are still full of products,
Yeah.
there may be a different selection of products, but I have to be aware of what the products I choose to use and the products I choose to put in my body.
Yeah.
And I think that's changed a lot of people over the last 2 years.
Yeah. I totally agree. I mean, even when it comes to fruit, I will not buy the kind of processed in a way cut fruit, right?
Yeah.
Because of the fact that I don't know how when it was cut. A lot of time they will put artificial sugar water to make it sweeter than it really is, because
Uh-huh.
they think, wow, this is naturally sweet when it really isn't.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot more work, but I'm gonna look for the best piece of watermelon or papaya. And my daily routine is, I've had some of the cashiers at the best supermarkets that I go to, they know me and they said, hey, you're clearing out the blueberries. I go through so many bundles of blueberries every week.
Yeah.
And one of my mentors, who I want to have on my podcast soon, is like, she taught me so much, where I take those blueberries and I soak them in apple cider vinegar for as long
Oh,
as you can, for about an hour. And I actually did an A/B experiment compared to what I was doing when I wasn't soaking, I wasn't just a normal wash, and I was putting in all those other superfoods, like hemp hearts and
mhm.
flaxseed grind and all that other stuff, right?
Yeah.
And she said, no, just that's what like in the animal kingdom, the one thing, right? So just all I did was I took those organic blueberries and I soaked them for an hour in the and in the apple cider vinegar.
Mhm.
And another tip is, if it can be expensive to always constantly do that, you can use regular vinegar and baking soda as well.
But
But
it changes the pH.
yeah, but in this case, for the apple cider vinegar, all I know is that mash was the best, the juiciest ones I've ever had. Literally, because
Mhm.
it was nothing but organic blueberries. And I'm a little skeptical. I don't know how much is organic, and how many pesticides they've truly used or whatever. So
Yeah.
if this can help my experience,
Mhm.
and that little A/B test initially really, it was so much better than when I had mixed other fruits in and other things. I just ate one thing, and the love that I got from those blueberries, it was just, I couldn't tell you.
Oh, I'm a huge fan of blueberries, and I told you that I planted 500 blueberry plants on the farm once.
Really, I didn't know about that. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so I was actually in a 2-year sustainable farming program in the
Yeah,
Northwest, in out on the peninsula of Washington, just south of Vancouver Island, BC.
yeah.
And I had a little farm out there, a little hobby farm, 48, 30, just 30 acres. Uh,
Oh.
but we had animals. Instead
Mhm.
of a newspaper route, the boys had,
Yeah.
they raised chickens and eggs, and they
Wow.
had, they sold eggs for their money,
Yeah.
and uh, grew lavender. Squim now is the lavender capital of North America, I believe,
Yeah.
was their claim to fame, and the
Wow.
longest running or irrigation festival in the country as well. So the but the reality is that what happened is I grew these blueberries because I love blueberries,
Mm.
and but the deer and the birds uh, devastated them.
So
I just
basically,
couldn't keep. I just could not keep the critters out of.
yeah,
For some reason, it was a battle. It was a constant battle, and finally
yeah,
that kind of had to end the conclusion. But it was hopeful. However, we had an orchard, we had a garden, we had everything
yeah.
that we needed, and grew a lot of our own food. So it
Wow.
was,
That's really my dream,
yeah,
is um, to be able to maybe sell my business and and be a digital nomad, and I could be living in a farm, and believe it or not, thanks to Elon Musk, and you can get high speed internet access almost anywhere.
Yes.
Literally.
Yes, it's really encouraging to see.
Yeah.
And I just think back, because you and I started in a time long before internet, when we had to go out and play in the fields to keep ourselves entertained with a stick or something.
Yeah.
And, it's like come back when the lights on the neighborhood are turned on or something like that. And it was just a different time. And, growing up and watching the evolution of how it takes place. And I'm very lucky, and I feel very fortunate that I have enough curiosity that I'm continuing to learn and experience technology, and going back to our topic of, we know enough to share it with someone else.
Yeah.
And, being an authority or being visible as someone that knows something about a topic is good. It's a good skill to have. And then also it's like, there's never an end to learning about it. But the reality is that we all have these experiences that we can actually expand on and use them in different ways. And just like farming and going, having this conversation with you about, soaking blueberries in vinegar to change the pH.
Yeah.
It's a lot of things that people either know and they don't even think about it, or people don't have an awareness about. So it's
And
it's almost before and after.
yeah, and in my case, blueberries is a perfect example of a fruit I actually disliked.
Mm.
And the only way I could come up with a way of, hey, when I would Google, okay, what are the best fruits and berries, and it came up with blueberries near the top, the pack, was, okay, let me just mash them up with my magic bullet. Let me see what happens. And experimenting. Okay, this is a great way to eat those blueberries because I don't really like eating them, and then I could, hey, I could mix and match with things, and to me, it's, again, that process from learning and just really learning about how to enjoy one fruit at a time, one bite, savor that moment, and not complicate it. And we have these, complicated dinners. We're making all this and that, and I'm just eating a simple blueberry.
Yeah, or I went through a juice fast.
Okay.
And take some apples and carrots and blueberries and some spinach, and you juice it up, and it's actually it's very good.
Yeah.
And you can use different combinations of that same mix and decide, okay, well, what flavor do I want to put in here to mix it up and make it a little more interesting, change it up a little bit.
Well, you know what? Here's a great tip that just blew my mind, and I think, again, it goes back to that ever-present ego. I go to Longo's here in the Toronto area, which is considered more of the premium grocery store, and every grocery store has that one kind of area off to the side where they have the perishables that they're trying to get rid of. Usually those fruits and vegetables, and and I would always kind of ignore it, the odd time look through it, but it wasn't a priority for me. And the other day, I bought these amazing bananas, and they could have lasted still another week, and I paid like just over $1. And I'm thinking, hey, because I know the quality. This is an expensive place, so these bananas would have cost me at least $1 each.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, now I have the humility. I've got the mindset. I'm going to go through there every week when I'm in there. Some things are not great, and you just you pass them through. But I'm thinking, these are things that everybody should be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. We take so many things for granted, gratis and for granted. And I think, if we slowed down a little bit more and just savored the flavor, so to speak,
Mhm.
and reflect on life and saying, more is not always better. Sometimes more just creates more anxiety,
Yeah.
more challenges, more stress. So, um, you
One
know,
one area I've always wanted to ask you about
mhm,
is cannabis use,
mhm,
because myself now it's been almost 10 years since I've been um, baking my own sort of cannabis brownies.
mm,
And um, it all started, my experience, my journey was as such that I didn't even try cannabis till I was over 40,
mhm,
because I always believed it was like an evil type of drug that you had to stay away from, and it was gonna ruin your life.
yeah,
And I was at the point where, hey, like, you know, I can't get any lower than this. Let me just see. My brother, somebody had introduced me to it, and the brownies came about. I was like, okay. I mean, even back then, I was healthy, and I didn't want to be smoking it. So I said, well, how can I try to consume it
mhm.
without having to,
Inhale it.
inhale it and stuff? So
Yeah.
I became sort of an expert in that, to the point where I've had people, offer to buy it from me, tell me, hey, it saved their marriage.
Yeah.
So, and what's your experience? Because you have so much more experience with cannabis and CBD.
Well, I'm like yourself. Never I never truly enjoyed smoking it
Yeah,
as much as I did with the edibles.
yeah,
And every time I go to a state that actually has edibles that I can go purchase, I'll make a trip in there. And it's interesting because my first experience was much younger smoking
mm,
cannabis than yours.
yeah,
And the reality is that what they're manufacturing or growing or producing these days is completely different than it
really.
was back in the 70s. It's
Wow.
it's it's a completely different
Product even.
product. Yeah. And
Wow.
it's not to say that it didn't exist then. I think it's just been more refined. I think it's been, the cultivation has increased and improved. The strength and quality has improved.
Yeah,
And the, cannabis has always just been a good relaxer for me. It's never been something that I've, uh, used to in excess.
yeah,
And it's just nice to be able to, you know, use it as a way to remove anxiety
yeah,
and stress and just kind of just take a pause and just enjoy the moment. And it's too it's really funny, uh, full transparency, because my boys used to always tease me because
yeah.
they would try to get me high. it's like it's like, here dad, here's some candy. It's like, I'll play along with you. Yeah, sure, I'll play along with you. And I haven't, I guess I have a high tolerance
Okay.
for it, so it doesn't impact me like it does a lot of other people.
Yeah.
And I never got paranoid as a result of cannabis use or anything like
Yeah.
that. So it's always, for me, it's always been, you know, an experience that I've enjoyed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I felt like I was um, the 40-year-old virgin when it came to cannabis. Um, initially, I just I remember the first experience when I smoked it, and I was, maybe my late 30s, whatever. I I, I could not stop laughing.
yeah,
I would start just laugh uncontrollably.
yeah,
And I thought that was great because literally, like, there's not enough laughter in the world.
yes,
Yeah, and we all, I guess, been through that stage where we find our favorite TV shows or music that works with that particular high, and
yeah.
it's wonderful.
It is a great experience. And I think the way we use it now versus the way, people have used it in the past is it's much more therapeutic. I think it's
Yeah.
more, normal. It's more, it's not seen as being an evil thing to do. And I think a lot of people need to be aware of that. Just like your plant-based journey, there's a
Yeah.
lot of things we don't know. And who are we? It's pretty arrogant to say that we shouldn't do things because, they're evil or bad. It's more about, well, how we consume, how we create, how we produce, how we learn, how we experience life is a unique journey for all of us.
Mhm.
And it would be nice to not place judgment on those experiences.
Yeah. There are a lot of underground places
Mhm.
in major cities from New York and others where the cannabis experience is um, being represented in the culinary form as well.
Mhm.
And it's more, even though in Canada where cannabis is even legal. So you may have heard, like, I mean, literally, either I can get it delivered same day, or or talk about delivery better than Amazon, or I can get it BC Bud coming in the mail. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And one thing I did notice is this: what you talked about. What I've noticed is quickly that you have to be very careful because they're growing so much. I've read about stories of mold being on there.
Yeah.
Right? They're artificially, trying to make that much higher HTC level.
Mhm.
I'm not really sure exactly what they're doing, but I'm concerned that if I'm concerned about pesticides on my fruit, I'm very much concerned about potential pesticides or what they're doing.
Yeah.
The cannabis, which I don't know, because they're grown in hydroponics, using it's like almost like crypto. They're using so much electricity,
Yeah.
and that part of the process I'm going to definitely look more into.
Yeah.
But if I had to make an ultimate dream of a business that I would like say this is my end goal, and it happens when I'm really creative, would be to have a really cool vegan plant-based restaurant where you start off with a little bit of maybe a little bit of cannabis oil. You finding out if they're comfortable with that, and then by the time in an hour or so, you bring out the courses, and it
Mhm.
sort of it gets in there, and that would be and you have almost like a tasting menu. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That would seasonally change with just the different produce that's out there. To me, it would be just a wonderful experience.
That reminds me of a story that two stories actually. In Toronto years ago, there was a place called, I think it was called Two Bites.
Okay.
So essentially, what it was a warehouse, and inside this warehouse there are multiple, almost street carts or small setups where they were cooking a unique food for that cart.
Okay.
And you would take your ticket, and they had spaghetti, they had pizza, they had salad, they had breads, they had all kinds of
Yeah.
meats and all of these. So you go from cart to cart. It's almost like a food court inside, but it's pretty high end.
Yeah.
And then you just go in and you select two bites from, so you can taste and select different opportunities within this place. And I just thought it was so fascinating that you could actually create this environment. And along the same lines as that is there's a restaurant I used to love to go to in Seattle
Hmm.
that the chef, there was no menu.
Really?
You went there and the first thing it was basically one price. You just pay for the night, and it was an experience.
Wow.
So you got to experience the chef's hospitality. It's like going into somebody's home. It was a very small restaurant, very unique. And so you'd start out with a cocktail, a drink or a martini or something like that,
Yeah.
kind of like, to kind of relax you. And then there was you know, a pre-placement, and it was like 7 or 8 courses throughout the evening. And it was probably 2 or 3 hours long experience.
Wow.
And so you're just going through there and you're just tasting this food, and being a foodie, it was just like so amazing because this food was so much flavor and so
Yeah.
much, and the whole experience was just incredible. And I could see that happening with your idea and your concept. So
Yeah, I mean, I've gone to places similar to what you talked about in the first example, those high end, sort of wonderful, or artisanal type of food stations, and they're wonderful. That's a great concept. Or the concept again where you're traditionally, because people still want that comfort. I mean, a small place where, we know in a post pandemic world that they can go out of their house and just relax and be with their friends and have a unique, different experience,
yeah,
and to me, that brings me joy to think about.
yeah,
That's the end game for me. And that's not always just lying on the beach. And I think even when we talk about plant-based, the mentoring, it all flows together.
it does flow together.
Yeah.
And it all boils down, Tony, I think for me, and I want to hear your perspective on this,
Yeah.
is the experience of connecting, the experience of conversation, the experience of having that effort, that opportunity to share something that we both can appreciate, the appreciation for it.
Yeah. For me, it's so rewarding is the one word that I cannot emphasize enough. That rewarding experience, but I've had to learn to implement differently. And that's the difference. I created, for example, plant-based accounts on Facebook and Instagram so I can connect with people who have the right mindset and who want to share and enjoy my content. And I would enjoy theirs.
Yeah.
I did not want to intrude on my regular profiles because I realized that was the kind of mistakes that I've made in the past. I didn't need judgment. I didn't need comments. Once in a while, I'll put a little post in there in my regular profile, right? But most of my content is geared towards that niche. So I'm learning from these people. What do they want? What are they interested in? What products can I sell them? How can I communicate with them and learn from them and just show my gratitude and humility?
Yes.
And it's such been a rewarding experience because I'm implementing what I've been learning in the last so many months.
Yeah.
And to me, if I was just sitting back and just saying, okay, and not being able to do anything, then it would be moot.
Yeah. And that goes back to the starting of our conversation today, is that how do we experience change, and how do we interact and educate and share this change in us with others that are interested in changing themselves?
Yeah.
And how do we reflect in that change in our lives and learn to be self-aware in the changes that are taking place around us? Because you have to choose to be who you are today. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you will not choose to be someone else and learn something new tomorrow, right? There was a before and after, and then you're coming up on a year, and then you're going to go to a raw food week, and that experience is going to change your perspective on a number of different things, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I even look at it from almost even a business perspective. I go, how can I like I A/B test all my pictures and my videos and all that, and I can't A/B test on my own body, right? I mean, if it doesn't work for me, fine, right? But at least I want to say I can do it. I can go all the way because right now my mindset is really pure. And I want to tell you a very interesting story. I went on a date with somebody a few months back, and what had happened was that they were vegan for 20 years. She was vegan for 20 years, but now she wasn't anymore. And I thought that this is very interesting, because so we're talking and we're at Boston Pizza, which is sort of a local chain here, and I said, tell me more. I'm intrigued because I was only maybe 6 months in onto my journey, and why somebody would change. And I was left a little unclear. I think she was saying it was for health reasons, right?
But you're not sure she was.
Well, yeah, it seemed like kind of hedging. Like all the research, what I've done, and is that you can get by, unless in very extreme cases, with everything in sort of the plant-based world, right?
Yeah.
But my research, and when I reached out to so many people, in terms of when I tell people the story, and their number one reason was they believe she didn't have it for the right mindset. The mindset wasn't there. Like, I don't know what her motivation was.
So her original motivation wasn't the same as it was today.
Or I don't even know what her original motivation was. Like, I'm saying she may have done this she wasn't doing it with the right mindset.
Well, I told you the story about Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
Who was a vegan, and then his for health reasons, he was promoted the idea that he probably should include some fish in his diet.
Yeah.
So pescatarian, right?
Yeah.
And then he found out that he was eating the same kind of fish every single day, and then the mercury levels in his body elevated. And so that created its own problem. So whether it's health reasons or motivated, I think the takeaway from that is that we still need diversity in our diets, even if we choose to limit them to a plant-based effort.
That's right.
And even if we choose not to be vegan, or if you decide to be a pescatarian, you can actually, you need to still shake it up a little bit. So
yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, one of the biggest issues that I have with a lot of sort of the intriguing dilemma and hierarchy of plant-based and vegan is corn, where, I mean, I'm going to munch down on that corn because I don't have as many options. But I do understand that it's 90% of corn is genetically modified. And it is what it is. You know what I mean? I mean, it's not something I would prefer to eat. And GMO is different than hybrid. A lot of times people confuse hybrids with GMO. But and that's a dilemma that, I'll have to live with, because technically then I'm not a vegan, or I'm not going to get rid of my favorite old leather sofa. So there's so many layers to that onion.
Yeah.
Anyways, Russ, thank you so much. I'm going to end that broadcast right